de los Via Urban Regeneration Forum y la entrega de este premio. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us at the celebration of the 6th edition of the Via Urban Regeneration Forum. La sexta edición de estos Via Clima, Regenerar Futuro, Clima y Energía, ha centrado el foco de atención en los objetivos 7 y 13 de desarrollo sostenible de la Agencia Euskadi Basque Country 2030, dedicados a la energía asequible y no contaminante y a la acción por el clima, objetivos que han orientado las líneas de debate abiertas estas jornadas de trabajo. Eskertzen dugu ere, Norvegiako enbaxadaren etorrera, Norvegiak Bilbon duen konsulatuarena, eta ekitaldi honetan laguntzen diguten erakundeena, Eusko Jaurlaritza, Bizkaiko Foru Aldundia eta Bilboko Udala. Queremos agradecer también la presencia de la Embajada Noruega, del Consulado Noruego en Bilbao y de las instituciones del Gobierno vasco, Diputación Foral de Vizcaya y Ayuntamiento de Bilbao que nos acompañan hoy en este acto. We are grateful for the presence here with us today of the Norwegian Embassy, the Norwegian Consulate in Bilbao, and the institutions of the Basque Government, the Provincial Council of Vizcaya and the City Council of Bilbao. Eta ekitaldi hasiera emateko hitz batzuk esango dizkigu Euskal Herriko Arkitektoen Elkargo Ofizialaren Bizkaiko lehendakariak Pablo Nistal jauna. Decía que queremos ceder la palabra. Como tenemos público en tanto internacional como nacional y aquí de la tierra, hemos querido tener la deferencia de que por lo menos podamos presentar a algunos en los dos idiomas, pero no se preocupe que yo le voy a dar paso ahora mismo. Quería decir, ya lo saben ustedes, que el primero en dirigirnos la palabra hoy va a ser el presidente de la delegación en Vizcaya del Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos Vasco-Navarro, el señor Pablo Nistal. Ahora sí. Puede subir por ahí si prefiere. Bueno.
Arratsaldeon guztioi, buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Gott ettermidden auch willkommen. Hoy ponemos el broche final a esta sexta edición del Via Clima, un congreso que ha reunido a expertos y profesionales para reflexionar sobre el papel de la arquitectura en un contexto de emergencia climática. Es un honor contar con la presencia del embajador de Noruega en España, el señor Nils Hausbaits, y de su señora Fátima Valdés, así como de la cónsul de Noruega en Bilbao, Begoña Echevarría. Damos también la bienvenida a la presidenta del CESCAE, Marta Vallosera, al decano del COAM, José María González Pinto, al que felicitamos ya que esta mañana ha sido abuelo, y a Asier Abaunza, concejal del Ayuntamiento de Bilbao, a Juan Carlos Abascal, viceconsejero de Planificación Territorial y Agenda Urbana. Y por supuesto y sobre todo, nos sentimos muy honrados y agradecidos por la presencia de Kittel Trader Thorsen y de su esposa, Jorunn Sanders, cuya amabilidad y simpatía ha cautivado a todos los que nos hemos acercado a ellos. Muchas gracias y sed bienvenidos a esta acogedora tierra. Su asistencia no solo nos honra, sino que pone de relieve los profundos vínculos que existen entre Noruega y el País Vasco, dos territorios que comparten una visión clara sobre la importancia de la sostenibilidad y el respeto por el medio ambiente. Noruega es un referente en la protección de sus recursos naturales, en el desarrollo de energías renovables y en la creación de modelos de desarrollo que combinan progreso económico con respeto por el entorno. En el País Vasco, esa misma sensibilidad está profundamente arraigada y nuestras relaciones históricas y económicas con Noruega nos han permitido enriquecer nuestras propias prácticas en favor del medio ambiente. Este acto es especialmente significativo porque tenemos el honor de entregar el galardón de esta edición al prestigioso estudio noruego Snoeta, un verdadero icono de innovación arquitectónica y sostenibilidad. A lo largo de su trayectoria, Snoeta ha demostrado una capacidad excepcional para integrar el diseño arquitectónico con el entorno natural y social. Sus obras no solo responden a necesidades funcionales, sino que transforman los espacios en lugares inspiradores y profundamente significativos. Entre sus proyectos más emblemáticos, que casi todos conoceréis, se encuentra la Ópera de Oslo, que redefine el paisaje urbano de la capital noruega al fusionarse con el fiordo. El Museo Nacional de 11 de septiembre en Nueva York, un espacio de memoria y reflexión cargado de simbolismo. El Pabellón de la Memoria en Utaya, una obra conmovedora que honra a las víctimas del trágico atentado del 2011. Y cómo no recordar aquí la extraordinaria Biblioteca de Alejandría, que reinterpreta la tradición arquitectónica en clave contemporánea. Además, Snoeta es pionero en sostenibilidad, con proyectos como el Powerhouse Brator Calla, el edificio más energéticamente positivo del mundo, ya que produce más energía de la que consume y que establece nuevos estándares para la arquitectura en el contexto del cambio climático. El galardón que hoy entregamos reconoce esa visión holística de la arquitectura y el impacto transformador de su trabajo. Snoeta nos invita a repensar cómo vivimos y cómo nos relacionamos con nuestro entorno y su filosofía con los principios que buscamos promover desde este congreso. Quiero expresar mi más profundo agradecimiento a las instituciones que han hecho posible este evento, al Gobierno vasco, a la Diputación Foral de Vizcaya y al Ayuntamiento de Bilbao. Su apoyo ha sido fundamental para que esta edición haya sido un éxito. Agradecemos también la colaboración de las empresas patrocinadoras y de los organismos que han contribuido a mantener el Vía Clima como un referente. Por último, es un privilegio contar con la presencia de Kjetil Tradel Thorsen, cofundador de Snoeta, quien nos ofrecerá unas reflexiones sobre su obra y su visión arquitectónica. Su compromiso con la sostenibilidad y la innovación nos inspira a seguir construyendo un futuro mejor desde lo local hacia lo global. Con esto, yo he concluido. Eskerrik asko, muchas gracias, Tusentak.
Veo que el señor Nistal está en plena forma, subiendo por aquí, por la parte delantera del escenario, pero para aquellos que tengan la rodilla un poquito delicada, tenemos aquí unas escaleras que son más cómodas, lo dejamos a su criterio. Pero bueno, si quieren utilizar las escaleras, para eso están. A continuación, quiero ceder la palabra a Juan Carlos Abascal, viceconsejero de Planificación Territorial y Agenda del Gobierno vasco.
Muy buenas noches, good night, Gabón, embajador, cónsul, autoridades, Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos, y, bueno, Asier, desde luego, Ayuntamiento de Bilbao. Son bastantes las ocasiones en las que tenemos la oportunidad de encontrarnos y para mí, desde luego, nos sentimos siempre acogidos como en casa, siempre en esta maravillosa ciudad en los que hemos tenido la oportunidad de haber estudiado aquí 5 años, hace ya más de 25 años, hemos tenido también la oportunidad de ver que habéis sido un ejemplo de transformación urbana y, desde luego, hemos tenido la oportunidad de poder ver toda esa evolución que realmente yo creo que hace de esta ciudad una ciudad maravillosa. Muchísimas gracias por vuestra acogida. Desde luego, vivimos tiempos, agradecer por supuesto al Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos la invitación a poder participar de esta entrega de premios. Y yo creo que una entrega de premios es un reconocimiento que desde luego viene a marcar de manera muy positiva el reconocimiento al buen trabajo que sin duda el equipo Snoeta ha venido a realizar. Solo decir en buena parte de mis discursos que no vivimos una época de simples cambios, sino que vivimos un cambio de época que genera miedos e incertidumbres, que es el alimento del populismo, pero que sin duda también va a generar enormes oportunidades que nos va a marcar los diferentes retos que vamos a tener que trabajar. Retos muy relevantes e importantes que tienen que ver con la igualdad efectiva y real, que tienen que ver con dejar un planeta mejor a nuestras generaciones venideras y que sin duda es de lo que habéis reflexionado. Pero son otras muchísimas cuestiones como atender a personas mayores en un contexto de envejecimiento o buscar soluciones habitacionales a aquellos colectivos con mayores dificultades o el buen gobierno. Son muchos los retos y yo creo que para todo ello es imprescindible y necesario el trabajo en equipo, la transversalidad, tener una visión integral donde buena parte de las soluciones a las que nos enfrentamos no tienen solo una visión urbanística, social o económica. Todo ello requiere de una transversalidad, de un trabajo en equipo y, en mi opinión, también de tener la suficiente humildad para entender que hay otros conocimientos que quizás no dispongamos y, desde luego, la de tener la generosidad de querer compartir cada cual nuestro conocimiento. Eso es lo que se viene a denominar especialización inteligente. Y ya vino a decir Pedro Miguel Echenique, que seguro conocéis, lo hizo además en nuestro municipio, del que he sido alcalde hasta hace apenas 2 meses, venía a decir que desde la competencia técnica surgen las ideas, surge la innovación, sin competencia técnica habitualmente lo que surgen son ocurrencias. Yo creo que buena parte de lo que hoy lo que vamos a entregar, este reconocimiento, desde luego lo que viene a marcar seguro que es un equipo que desde luego trabaja en equipo, que trabaja de una manera transversal y que desde luego tiene la suficiente competencia, aptitudes y actitudes para poder trabajar buena parte de esos retos y que se van a convertir en unos auténticos aliados para que desde la colaboración público-privada, desde la colaboración institucional, seamos capaces de abordar buena parte de esos retos. Uno de ellos, sin duda, dejar un planeta mejor a nuestras generaciones venideras. Y yo creo que hay que dejar bien claro que en estos mismos instantes de contexto de fake news y de miedos e incertidumbres que son el alimento del populismo, es un momento en el que vamos a tener que combatir a ese negacionismo climático, ya que el cambio climático mata. Y, desde luego, es un ejercicio que tenemos que combatir, pero que también tenemos que seducir a las muchísimas personas que, desde luego, creen que hay soluciones mágicas y no las hay. Lo que hay realmente es el trabajo, lo que hay es, desde luego, abordar los retos del futuro y yo os animo a que podamos abordar esos retos del futuro, que será, sin duda, lo que dejaremos a nuestras generaciones venideras. Eskerrik asko, muchísimas gracias.
Antes de ofrecerles la proyección de un breve cortometraje sobre Bilbao, escucharemos también a la presidenta del Consejo Superior de Colegios de Arquitectos, la señora Marta Val Lloseras. Jarraian, hitza lagako dugu, arkitektuen elkargoen Kontseilu Nagusiko lehendakariari Marta Val Lloseras Andrea.
Embajador, cónsul, concejal, viceconsejero, presidente de la Delegación de Vizcaya del Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos Vasco-Navarro, decano del Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos Vasco-Navarro. Bueno, queridos amigos y amigas, empiezo agradeciendo la invitación para poder estar hoy aquí, en este día especial, una vez más, aquí en Bilbao, esta ciudad maravillosa. Y bueno, y en esta presentación del Premio Vía, que cumple su 6ª edición y que con el tiempo se ha ido consolidando como la plataforma de referencia para la difusión y la promoción de la arquitectura vizcaína. Quisiera felicitar a la delegación de Vizcaya, del Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos Vasco-Navarro y a su presidente Pablo por el impulso de esta iniciativa que supone una importante contribución a la visibilidad y puesta en valor de la relación entre la arquitectura y la sociedad. Esta relación es esencial para el desarrollo de ciudades y entornos urbanos más humanos, inclusivos y sostenibles, en los que los ciudadanos son los protagonistas. Porque la arquitectura no solo diseña edificios, sino que nos permite disfrutar de espacios que mejoran la calidad de vida de las personas, respondiendo así a sus necesidades y fomentando la interacción social y la reducción de desigualdades. Hoy nos ha hecho una presentación el concejal sobre Bilbao, que creo que es un claro ejemplo de que realmente cómo a través de la planificación urbana se pueden cambiar las ciudades, se pueden humanizar y transformar. En un contexto además marcado por el cambio climático, los problemas de acceso a la vivienda, lo decía antes el viceconsejero, la arquitectura tiene realmente capacidad de transformar el entorno social y cultural, ofreciendo soluciones a problemas urbanos como la pobreza, la movilidad o la escasez de espacios públicos, generando además un sentimiento de pertenencia que es fundamental para fortalecer la identidad colectiva y el bienestar social y que sienta así las bases del legado, lo decía también el viceconsejero, que vamos a dejar a las futuras generaciones. En esta edición, el Premio Vía amplía sus fronteras, premiando al Estudios Noeta, en reconocimiento a su importante contribución a la sostenibilidad y la lucha contra el cambio climático. Durante sus 35 años de trayectoria, el estudio se ha convertido en un referente, no solo por proyectos icónicos que todos reconocemos y que además han sido premiados internacionalmente, sino por su importante aportación al campo de la arquitectura basada en un enfoque multidisciplinar, integrador y sostenible, con intervenciones profundamente conectadas con el contexto social y ambiental donde se ubican esas intervenciones y por el empleo de tecnologías innovadoras, materiales ecológicos y soluciones para mejorar la eficiencia energética. Por ello, me gustaría trasladar, en nombre del Consejo Superior de Colegios de Arquitectos de España y del mío propio, Nuestra más sincera felicitación por la concesión del Premio Vía, que es un justo reconocimiento a la labor realizada en defensa de la arquitectura de calidad al servicio de las personas. Congratulations. Me despido ya reiterando mi felicitación a la Delegación de Vizcaya, a su presidente, a todo el equipo del colegio. Sabemos que organizar estas cosas necesitan dedicación, pero también se le pone mucha ilusión. Y también un agradecimiento a todos los que estáis hoy aquí. Eskerrik asko.
hope you enjoyed this film with these beautiful images of the old Bilbao that we even don't really get access to, so it's been a pleasure. Decía que realmente espero que para todos haya sido un placer ver estas imágenes. Para nuestros invitados de Noruega espero que también, pero incluso para la gente de aquí de Bilbao no es habitual ver estas imágenes de ese Bilbao de hace tanto tiempo. Jarraian hitza ematen diogu Bilboko udaleko hiri plangintzako proiektu estrategikoetako eta espazio publikoko zinegotziari Asier Apaunza jauna. A continuación, damos la palabra al concejal de Planificación Urbana, Proyectos Estratégicos y Espacio Público del Ayuntamiento de Bilbao, el señor Asier Apaunza.
Eskerrik asko guztioi eta eskerrik asko batez ere bertoko arkitektoen elkargoari aurtengo edizio barri honengatik, vía forum honengatik eta sari honengatik. Decía que buenas tardes y muchas gracias en primer lugar al Colegio Oficial de Arquitectos Vasco-Navarro por la invitación a acompañar en esta gala de entrega de premios VIA, pero también por esta nueva edición de esta Bienal de Arquitectura ya consolidada, en la cual además tuve ocasión de estar en las primeras ediciones y yo creo que ya se ha consolidado como un clásico y una gran oportunidad para reflexionar, para debatir sobre el papel de la arquitectura en nuestra sociedad y también, como no, para galardonar y para reconocer la buena arquitectura. Congratulations in that point to Esnoeta, our awarded studio this year. I think that it's very special to have you here, and we are really happy to have you here in Bilbao. These B awards, I think, that have been really well consolidated in these years. I mean, we are looking back and we see which architects have received this B award. I think that we have a very good selection of what I think internationally are the best architect studios in the world. And so to have this year Esnoeta as one of these awarded architects and architect studios, I think it's very good for Bilbao and very good for this B Awards also tradition. And I think that you are a very good example of what architecture should provide to any city where these kind of projects are developed. I mean, you are mixing sustainability with functionality and also with beauty. And to have a balance among these three issues, I think it's the most difficult point. We have seen a lot of works all around the world that they are very beautiful, but probably they are not very functional. And in many cases, they are not very sustainable. And so to have the possibility of learning from your work about how to balance all these three issues, the beauty, the functionality, and the sustainability, I think it's one of the best things of this year's award. And that's the reason why Esnoeta, I think, is one of the best choices for this award this year. So thank you very much for accepting this prize, for being here in Bilbao. And, well, we don't know, probably we will have the opportunity of having a work of Esnoeta in Bilbao in the future. Previously, we had the possibility of being talking a little bit about the works that have been developed in Bilbao in the last 30 years, and also to show a little bit of our plans about the future. We have a tradition of inviting to good architects to our competitions, to our tenders, to define the master plans and also the design of the most significant buildings of our city. And we will continue this way. I think that is the good way to have this kind of international and open competitions where we can choose among the best designs, among the best works for our buildings and for the urban design of our city. And so I repeat it again, thank you to the architect union, I don't know how to translate it, Colegio de Arquitectos, for this event, to have the possibility of learning from the best examples around the world. And I hope that in the next edition of BIA Forum, we will have also the possibility of learning more even about these issues. And of course, we will continue working together with you. And I don't know, probably in the future also with Esnoeta. Thank you very much.
Señora Baunza, no se vaya todavía, porque si le parece a usted bien, va a tener el honor de entregar el premio esta noche, aprovechando que le tenemos aquí. Bueno, el premio sabemos a quién se le concede, al Team Snoeta, y tenemos aquí al señor Kjetil Trædal Thorsen. I hope I said your surname right. It has been a bit of a controversy about the pronunciation of your surname. Anyhow, congratulations for the prize of the 6th edition of the BIA awarded to the Team Snoeta and that you are going to collect today. Congratulations. Sí, un poquito más adelante. Okay, your turn for your intervention. Thank you.
Wow. If there was one day in my life where I wish I could speak Spanish, that would be today. Thank you so much. The hospitality of Bilbao is just incredible. We came in last night. We were picked up at the airport. I've never, ever experienced that before. And then we were brought straight for dinner in the most incredible little beautiful restaurant with all the local dishes. So maybe you will not get rid of me. You have to be careful. And also, after lunch today, we had a fantastic walkthrough on the history of Bilbao. And I have to say, thank you so much. It was a great honor just to listen to the long-term vision of a city. In most cases, we are faced with short-term decision makers who don't really know what the next political regime is going to do. So this unifying long-term understanding of long-term goals is what makes a difference. I was truly impressed by the presentation. Thank you very much. And also, that reminds me that also from our perspective, from the Snøhetta perspective, we try to do the same. We're not in a political situation as you are here, but you have to think long-term. Architecture is about long-term. And at the very beginning, when we established our little office, we created also for us a long-term strategy, long-term way of looking at what we should be doing in the future. Because this little group of people had an idea based on one document. It was called Our Common Future, and it was established by Gro Harlem Brundtland, who has also been our Prime Minister. And Our Common Future had three extremely important messages. It was all about sustainability. It was about environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economical sustainability. And this report from 1987 is really the report that created all the UN goals that you see today. Carry that with you. So many people over such a long time have actually been focusing on trying to understand the dilemmas that we are facing with the future that we're in the middle of. And this little report told us that it probably is possible to translate the content of this report into, at that time, especially architecture and landscape architecture for us in combination. We said we need to combine architecture and landscape architecture much tighter, because there was a tradition that there was only landscape architecture happening if there was any money left after the architecture was built. We had to bring landscape architecture budgets into the architectural budgets, and by that, creating a holistic perspective. And finally, after many, many years, we ended up in this location in Oslo where everything is happening slowly. It's the office that you see at the back with the Snøhetta sign. And that's where this group of people from all over the world gather every 2 years. The mountain Snøhetta you can see at the back. We took the name from this mountain, not because we wanted to be a mountain, but because we established the Snøhetta practice above a beer place in Oslo called the Hall of Dovre. And Dovre is the mountain area where Snøhetta is the highest peak. So our office was here, the beer place was here, and we had a stair from our office down into this pub. And that pub was called Dovre, and we were at the top, so we called ourselves Snøhetta. Extraordinarily contextual. This combination of landscape architecture and architecture then unfolded when we won the competition of the Alexandria Library in 1989. We were not even, or just about 30 years old. And by the way, while I'm saying this, I'm reminded that maybe a lot of you will have a lot of questions in Spanish afterwards. Difficult questions, I presume. So both Arate and Jorunn, sitting here, get up for a second. So ask, please, don't ask me, ask them. So winning this competition, and Jorunn was already part of that competition, we set up an office in Los Angeles. We had been traveling in Mexico for the time being, looking at a combination of art, landscape, and architecture. And part of the art was, of course, this huge stone wall that Jorunn was responsible for, together with a whole little group of young Egyptians. She developed the stone art piece that you see on the wall today, hand-carved by people we trained for more than 2 years. And all of a sudden, 6,000 square meters of hand-carved granite was a picture in the city. For a library that actually gave you the content of the world if you know the history of the Alexandria Library. Now, of course, the tilting of this building and the sun disk, or as we usually say also, the computer disk of this building, saying yes and no to light, became extraordinarily important as a high-tech element in aluminium, really engineered down to the smallest detail, in combination with the rough granite that was hewn for the wall. And of course, it is a hall full of columns, as they have to be in Egypt, with the same kind of way of carrying the space. And it was a big, big reading room. And we went back to visit for the 20 years celebration last year. And it took us actually 12 years to finish it. So you could say it's 12 years plus 20 years, so it's basically 32 years since we started. But, you know, we interviewed a lot of different people, and it's interesting to listen to what they have to say, if we have some sound. In any case, after the visit now to Alexandria, this reminded us of one of the core elements that we had from the very beginning. Architecture, design, landscape architecture is not for the sake of architecture and landscape architecture and design. It is purely for people. There is no such thing as architecture for the sake of architecture. And we have to keep this in mind when we work as a collective at Snøhetta. We have to keep this in mind when we look at the future challenges that we have in architecture. We have to get the best forces together for us to be able to solve the issues that we have in front of us. And one good sign of this collective ownership that happened in Alexandria was during the Arabic Spring, when the inhabitants of Alexandria were holding hands 24/7 to protect the building against hooliganism. And only 2 buildings kept open during the whole Arabic Spring: the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and the Library of Alexandria. And that means that there is a pride by the citizens connected to this building, and they want to protect it. The next big project that we were lucky to win just as the library in Alexandria opened was the Opera House in Oslo. And you can maybe recognize that we are working with sloping surfaces. Sloping surfaces are transitions, but they are also working, and now I have to show this to you because I don't have the microphone, but they are dealing with the vectorization of the body. If you walk on something horizontal, all the forces go to the center of the earth. If you walk on a slope, you have a vector, a horizontal portion of that, which means your consciousness in relationship to your surroundings are different. Now, it is different to sit on a slope than on a flat floor. It is different to swim in the water in front of a building like this because you start owning it differently. It's all about different types of accessibility and social sustainability in that sense in the city. It's all about the upbringing of children and how you get to the point where they understand materiality. The touch, the sitting, the laying down are all parts of experiencing our physical surroundings, as skiing on the roof might be. And of course, we ski everywhere, but there is a certain reason why you generate ownership to a place. 1, accessibility. 2, cappuccino free. And 3, desegregational, meaning that you can come from anywhere in the city and actually visit these places without having to pay. Now, of course, sometimes it is on a Monday morning, not so full, and then all of a sudden you have a concert on the roof, which again is the same thing as with the Alexandria Library. You're giving the building to the people. You're giving the building away. It's not our building. It belongs to the inhabitants and the users and the performers of the Opera House. We should never ever forget that architecture, again, is in the service of humankind and at the same time protecting the environment. Now, of course, the third one that actually gave us a way forward was the 9/11 Memorial Pavilion. Very difficult. We suggested to the harbor authorities and to New York City that we do not design a building. We negotiate a building with all the parties involved, the policemen, the firemen, the Catholics, the Protestants, the Muslims, the right wing, the left wing. We negotiate with everyone without any prejudice. And this negotiation leads to a design. And it was the first time that we didn't sit down and design a building, but we negotiated pictures in people's minds of what it could become. And it's all about interactivity again. I want to see. I want to be part of. I want to be where it happened, but I don't want to be reminded all the time because that happens in the museum. Now, of course, all these things come together in a funny way, and I was very surprised that we at Snöta got this award because we've never really done much in Spain. But we have done one little thing. In San Sebastian, this little roof, which is an entrance into the San Sebastian metro station. It's a kind of coral reflecting roof. And to tell you the truth, we were very proud when we had done it because Norman Foster had done the same in Bilbao. So you can imagine we were kind of high on this situation. But we have tried. You know the museum here, which went to Norman Foster. It's going to be a beautiful building. We wanted to create something a little bit more tactile, maybe in the use of materials, maybe holding back a little more, and maybe not contrasting so much to the existing. But I think, you know, you win some and you lose some, and actually you lose more than you win. And that's okay. It is totally okay. And we've had the same with this convent that we developed. We didn't win this one either, but you learn. You learn about culture, you learn about the conversations that you have, and you learn about the way things could be. And you interpret, and you step forward, and you use your social intelligence to do it even better the next time. So this was another one in San Sebastian, which we lost to Bjarke Ingels, of course. And it is the Culinary Institute in San Sebastian. Well, you know, we learn. We don't win, but we learn. And I think these attempts in Spain over many years is for us okay. We've had attempts in Denmark for like 20 years and never won anything because the Danish, they say, we can do it better ourselves. But when we move into all these projects, there is a lot of research at the very beginning of projects, material research, dealing with, for instance, here, plastic that comes out of the fishing industries in the northern parts of Norway, ending up as plastic pellets and becoming chairs. And we have this production line still ongoing. Or we can use hemp, whatever that's called in English. It's kind of a weed, which then is being gathered again into pellets and becoming lamps. Or we can do that with mycelium, which is a mushroom that you grow and creates the most incredible acoustic panels. So all these things are in production, but we do a lot of research based on this, like waste, glass waste from kitchenware, where we use the glass to come back and create these tiles. So all of these things are studies that then go into the larger production line of our projects. We're right now doing the biocrete, which is a mix between concrete and coal, holding the CO2 in the concrete. And right now we're doing lots of research, and we're rolling out the first big project with this biocrete CO2, not quite neutral. You know, concrete is one of the biggest CO2 problems we have. So we have to solve this issue because we will never ever want to get rid of concrete. So we have to work on the concrete. And we're doing that, and a lot of other people around the world are doing the same. And in this research, a lot of tiny little projects appear, and a series of projects here that we call keyless structures. These are structures that don't have a lock. You can walk in and out of them all day long. They don't belong to you, it's not yours, but they're open for you to use. If you're walking in the mountain regions, you can walk straight into this building, and you can stay overnight should you be caught in a winter storm, because then it gets cozy, you have a fireplace, fire is always there. So it's one of these keyless structures, but we have all kinds of tiny little projects that are the same, open to the public, accessible, not locked. People come in and they spend the time here and they see the landscapes and they involve themselves with this. Even to the extent for larger groups of people being able to come with these wooden buildings in a mountain area of Norway, where you can see the solid wood actually happening, coming straight out of the production line and bringing itself into this kind of setting that you have for these type of buildings. Now, it is important that we construct even more keyless structures in the world. Accessible buildings where you don't need to be afraid of people coming and ruining it. Because through public ownership, buildings, places are being protected. If you own it, you don't want to ruin it. And we do these interventions down to the smallest step, right? It's sort of this kind of notion of understanding landscapes. And they appear also in urban settings, which we will see. And slowly, slowly, you let nature do the job over time, and all of a sudden you're set back to become the viewer of what nature is doing. Or you can go underwater with an underwater restaurant and marine biological research center. You can lift it in, you can fix it to the ground, because it's actually a ship, it's floating. And then all of a sudden you have this most incredible kind of space that gives you the possibility of doing a biomarine research, but at the same time having your dinner. And we need more mixed-use buildings in cities. We need buildings that keep open 24/7 and that actually approach you in a different manner. And funnily enough, looking through this window for the marine biologists is better than looking through a camera or diving, because you can follow all the movement that's happening straight outside the window, and you can discover more of the changes in the water than you could if you were doing normal research. But it's also about factories and industries. How do you make workspaces in the industry more interesting? There was just a huge television program in Norway about exactly this factory that we have designed, where the factory owner is spending a lot more money than on a normal factory. And they were asking the workers in the factory, wouldn't it be better for you if you got a more normal factory and a higher salary? And the workers said, no. It's better to have daylight where I'm working than to have a little bit more in salary. And in any case, it would have to be distributed to so many, so it wouldn't make a big difference. I think these things are important. Like here with Swarovski and the new generation of production lines. This is a factory. but it's also a social space and a cultural space for a small factory in Austria. People gather, there are performances, lectures in the middle of the production line for crystals. We can mix things in the most incredible ways that we don't think about. It is about getting the left side of the brain to talk to the right side of the brain. And if we can do that, we can combine things that have never ever been combined. Like here in Lascaux for the Cave Museum, where you actually penetrate and rebuild it. You bring artists in to combine their efforts. You bring different professions into the game. You work together. You let your ego go. There are too many egos in my profession, I have to say, I'm sorry. There are too few people who actually collaborate widely and recognize collaboration. And based on this, of course, you have all of a sudden something that is a fake cave. And that's why when you come out of the cave, you have to be honest and show how it was made. Otherwise, people would believe they were in the real cave. So this is the origin of the origin. It's actually a contemporary piece of art, 30,000 years old inspiration. And all these things come together in new countries as well, like our first project in Saudi Arabia, the ITHRA, the Center for Culture, the first public cinema in Saudi Arabia, the first communal entrance for men and women, the first restaurant where men and women could sit together, and at the same time, a unique opportunity to create a project that pushes cultural accessibility for a public that had never ever had cultural accessibility. No exhibitions, no concert houses, no libraries, no museums, and the responsibility that we carry and saying, okay, you're a dictatorship, so your people will never ever be able to go to the museum. No, we're doing it for the people. And the library is, of course, extraordinarily important because that's where men and women, girl and boy, men and men, girl and girl can hide behind the bookshelves and have a kiss. Because in the end, it's all about this slow movement of the tool of architecture to bring different aspects of life together. And like with the Library of Alexandria, you have the round earth wall to the right, thousands of year old building method, and you have the high-tech stainless steel pipes on the other side. You saw them maybe here, wrapped around the building. And we're testing now hot water in them to see how we can extract the surface temperature and the cooling of the building by actually utilizing these pipes and giving them life in a different way. The performance and exhibition areas, which leads me in a big leap. Because what is it you provide for people when they have certain types of activities? Here in Australia, not so far away from Adelaide, this little surf center, okay, for a small community, almost living from surfing. And all of a sudden, we're in the middle of play towers in Austria, jumping back. And my idea today was, in fact, when you talked about the lifts, why don't we combine a public lift with a play tower here? I mean, it's absolutely possible to walk up and down and play at the same time. You can come into this and you can have the kids climb it instead of taking the lift. Or they can maybe even slide back down if you wish. So all these things can be combined. They can belong together. Like here in Japan, Hokkaido, for skiing. This is not a hotel. That's the name of the hotel. And as we move into nature and look into the different aspects of society, we need to think. This is a high-rise building that is under construction in Tokyo for the moment. And, it's in a very, very busy crossing. And it needs to be dense. And actually not so many high-rise buildings in Tokyo. You think it's full of high-rise buildings, but it's not New York. And this kind of notion of density in the city here is totally different than the densities that you think about in many other cities. That's why you have to double the ground surface. When you build tall, you have to build another public level in order for the public not to lose the ground the building is taking. Okay, you need to take a lift up, but you're doing the same here by protecting the underground. And you can let that walk with the building on the way up. We're doing the same here in Sydney. It's called Harbourside. Huge development, but it's really all about this garden. And then the footprint of the high-rise building, reclaiming land together with the different people of this area. Or like here in Hong Kong, the Airside high-rise building, which is doing the same with lots of gardens on the way up. So yes, there is a necessity of condensing, but using the ground 2 times, 3 times, 4 times for the public becomes a very obvious thing to do. And then, of course, we have all these refurbishing projects that we're doing for the time being. You know, the discussion on should we use only what we have and not build new? Too pessimistic for me, because it's also a top-down position. Many places in this world do not have things they can reuse. We have to be aware of this situation. This is in Milan, the old slaughterhouse, which we're turning again into an open garden. We're providing housing, and the calculation of the overall CO2 footprint, including every material, including energy production, is calculated in this project. Or like here, the Manifattura Tabacchi in Verona, complete restructuring of an old tobacco factory. All these things come together when you start looking at it. And even in Paris, when you refurbish the Musée Carnavalet, right? It's 5 buildings from 1200, 1400, 1600, and you bring them together, and what can you do? Almost nothing. But you can put a way of moving through the museum back into this building. So we designed these stairs and a new flow of how you move through the museum. Or it could be probably the only extension of a Zaha Hadid building in the world, our extension of her building at the Ordrupgård in Copenhagen. I had conversations with Zaha before she died, obviously, about exactly this, and she actually did personally approve. It's okay, you can do it. Because it is probably the lowest building we've ever done. It's only about 1 meter tall. And the rest of it is obviously underground, and we're connecting with Zaha's stair, going all the way down into this very classical exhibition hall. And I think all these things come together maybe when you start looking at how to preserve things. What is history? What is the definition of space that you're actually redoing things within? So this is the Musée de la Marine in Paris. It's the whole left wing that you see here. And, you know, it's Trocadero. And this is the entrance. And the first thing you see is, of course, an ancient diver. I have to tell you a little story. Oh, have I spent too much time already? Huh? Still okay? I have to tell you a little story from a historian called Amr, from 1500s in Alexandria. You know, when Alexander the Great was building Alexandria as a city, every night it was ruined by these ugly animals coming out of the sea and ruining everything they had built. This is how the story written by Amr goes. Then the city of Alexandria said, let's put divers into the bay to draw these creatures and build sculptures of them. So when they come ashore at night, they see a mirror of themselves, they get afraid, and they leave. So they sent, actually, divers with air bubbles into the bay of Alexandria. They actually did design them, and you can still find portions of these sculptures of these creatures coming out of the sea underwater in Alexandria. So this is the diving underwater history of the world. And Of course, it's a spatial requirement to look at the waves and how these caves and the way you interpret modernity when you look at old buildings, bringing them back, giving them the space they had before they were cluttered. All the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, so many buildings around the world have been ruined. Now it's our responsibility to bring them back. And when we do, we have to know the spaces that we're dealing with. So, another beautiful example in my mind is in Melbourne. This is one of the most famous buildings in Melbourne. It's the old tea house. It's the warehouse for the tea coming from China at the time and developing and spreading all around the Southeast Asian areas. So for 7 years, we've been working on a project trying to build something beside it. And finally, last week, we got the approval to actually build the tall building just beside this little tea house. And it feels good. I think it works. I think this notion between sometimes new and old is the right thing to do because you give new life to the old tea house. We're doing a similar thing in Brussels, where we're reconstructing completely, but keeping all the structures of the old building, and just giving it an environmental facade and looking at the production, but also a climbing platform for the public, all the way from the street level and all the way up to 6th floor. So it actually is open to the public all the way through. Now, of course, you know that the issues on environmental issues is getting really pertinent. 40% of all CO2 in the world is actually to be seen as a result of the building industry. 40% is a high number. Of course, not only architecture, roads, harbors, bridges, everything, tunnels, but it's a high number. And architecture can actually contribute. So we created a company together with 3 other partners, 1 contractor, an initiative called the Powerhouse. This was our first test for a building that would actually produce more energy than it consumes. So what is a powerhouse? A powerhouse is a building where you start calculating all embodied CO2, production of all materials and all building elements, transport of them to the site. You calculate all the consumption of energy in the building, and you calculate the CO2 equivalents when you recycle the building. It's a huge mathematical effort. And it's really hard because you have to determine the CO2 content of every element that you're using. So it actually does give us a huge complexity. This was the first one in small scale. Then we did another one in the States at Harvard. Easier to do it with an older building because you already have spent the CO2 that is captured in that particular building. So this is a small study at Harvard, which also is a neutral CO2 or a CO2 neutral building. Don't confuse, I know it's complicated, people. Don't confuse neutrality with negativity. There is no such thing as a CO2 negative building, because you have to pay back all the embodied energy that is located in that building in order for that to happen. Even here, with our first big powerhouse, which is really producing quite an amazing amount of clean energy, more than it consumes. Even for this building, it takes us almost 30 years to get down to 0, including embodied energy. It's crazy. But we've done it with all the known technologies that we have. We don't have to invent anything. We do it with thermal energy, solar energy. We do it with lowering the consumption of the energy that you have. My hope is that very soon in future, the electricity coming through your cables is completely clean. Then we don't have to worry about the solar panels. Then we don't have to worry about how to make a building clean, because it will be clean already in its production line. This is the second powerhouse where we tested exactly the same thing. It's a small Montessori school where we tested the same thing, all inclusive, with consumption, with embodied, and equivalence calculated for the lifespan of the building. And now we're doing a whole little city, a student city, in the northern parts of Norway, which are all powerhouses. And this is where we're rolling out the biocrete to make sure that the concrete doesn't ruin the calculation for us. So finally, we're getting to a point with wood, with replanting in a forest the wood that we're using for the building, with introducing a clean concrete, and by producing enough electricity and reducing the consumption, we can get faster neutral, maybe already within 15 years. But we have all kinds of experiments when it comes to this stuff. This is a 000 building that we just opened in Oslo called Nydalen Vertical. It's a wooden building, but the structure is steel and concrete, so it's hybrid. But at the same time, the 000 means there is no external energy for cooling, no external energy for heating, and there is no external energy for maintaining all the elements that you need in order for the environment to go round. And it has public access, and it is shaped for the wind to actually blow in the right direction for this particular location. It actually was voted the second ugliest building in Norway last year. We have to get used to change aesthetics. Form follows partially the environmental issues, and slowly, slowly, we'll get to love these buildings because they do good. They actually provide you with a better footprint, and actually some of the spaces internally are quite interesting. And some of the detailing is interesting because we can use different types of materials. The wall to the right is a clay wall that holds the humidity and the temperature of the space intact. Or it can be like here in Kautokeino, a school for reindeer herding, and a theater for the Sami people all the way up in the northern parts of Norway. Actually, it's probably the only theater space with the slaughterhouses directly beside the theater stage, because they're also learning how to slaughter the reindeer here. So all these things come together as types of architecture which we might be able to deal with once we get the right setting, once we understand what materiality means, once we understand what wood can do, once we understand that we have more opportunities than what the average building industry is always promoting. And we do that in many, many different places. We just opened this library in Beijing. It's the new main library in Beijing. It's completely filled with photovoltaic on the top. It has an air conditioning system, which means that where people are, it has the right temperature. But all the way up under the roof, it doesn't have to have that temperature. It can be hot as hell as long as people are not there. So that the space makes an efficient system for ventilation. The glass is enormous, of course. This is China. It's one piece of glass, 16 meters tall, and over 200 of them. But this internal space, this kind of landscape idea of a library comes back to the Library of Alexandria, and it's in many ways the same. It's bringing people together under one big roof, trying to understand what reading and spacious elements might mean. And this can go all the way down to projects like here, Times Square in New York, where we transformed Times Square from what you see to the left to what it is now to the right. Getting rid of the cars is sometimes just great. I mean, we just don't need so many cars everywhere. And the funny thing was, the city of New York had not even made a calculation or an attempt to understand where the cars were going to go after they closed the traffic on the whole of Times Square. They said, we don't care. If you're in a car, you'll probably find a way. If you don't, you'll probably park the car somewhere and you walk. You know, they didn't care. And I found that extremely daring and actually quite beautiful, because all of a sudden you have people in the city of New York placing their bodies where only cars were before. It means you're rediscovering your city. You're locating yourself in a position where you were never before. And of course, it triggers completely different type of activities. And these big master plans are important. This is our master plan in Budapest, which is now moving forward slowly, where everything is about the water, energy production lines, and trying to understand the flooding systems of the city, and try to see how we can conceive that further. Or like here, a university in Klagenfurt, in Austria, where everything is, again, under one roof. Everything is about collectivity and understanding and energy production and CO2 calculations. Or here in Sweden, where all of a sudden this building becomes the driver for the development of a larger master plan. So you build the collective building first, and then you build the housing. And again, of course, wooden details and artwork connected. Or like here, the whole Croisette in Cannes, which we're just redoing. And it's fabulous, you know, you get to do 4 kilometers of coastal line, and you have to think about everything. Some things are protected, but the initiative is just to make the whole issue of communication better in the city. It's about infrastructure, it's about taxis, cars, bicycles, and people walking, with then, of course, a pattern that actually generates a totally different approach. And right now we're building, these are buildings that are about to come up, and for the moment, this is the Roosevelt Presidential Library in Iowa. And it's all about bringing back the original biosphere to this landscape. Yes, it's a building, it's a library, but it's really about recreating the issues of the biosphere and the biolandscape in the area. Or here, the new opera house in Shanghai, which is under construction. You know, it's crazy. I mean, we didn't think when we did the opera house that every time we get an invitation for an opera house, it would say in the program, and you have to walk on the roof. That was not the idea. It was, you know, so all of a sudden you're being caught by your own idea. But maybe it can work here. You know, it's this sort of spiral that maybe triggers you to actually do that. And to be communal in China is a difficult thing. But maybe you have to be generous enough to invite people into situations where you think it could actually work. And to me, these are the experiments that we need to go for. These are the ways we need to reinterpret architecture to be positive about the future. Or the new opera house in Busan in South Korea, which is under construction for the moment, where this whole notion of being inside, outside, all the prepositions. Architecture is the art of prepositions. It's all about where the body is located. And, of course, the new opera house in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, which is slightly different typology, where you bring all these things together, and you bring outdoor, indoor together in a similar way. And we just opened our metro station. Riyadh has a new metro. Can you believe it? And it's going fast. And this is our metro station, where you can actually look down 6 floors through this mirror. It's like a periscope from a submarine. But it also brings light 6 floors down. And you can see portions of the garden reflecting here. So 6 floors down, there is a garden, which you see upside down, of course, in this big ball. And when you look up, you look back down to the same garden. So every year, we make a gingerbread house for the refugee help in Norway. And this year, we created a non-house. We created only the missing house. So this is being sold around the world for the moment for people to pay for a small refugee for themselves and their family related to these conditions around the world for the moment, which we all need to support environmentally, sustainably, economically. Happy Christmas. Thank you.
Congratulations for your work. I can say I speak for everyone that it's really impressive, all those pictures. I presume that many of the architects here in this room have been so jealous probably, or maybe also full of hope of maybe one day being part of projects like the ones you just showed to us. So congratulations for your work, congratulations for the award, and also for this big applause you just received, which shows the what's the word? Admiration that probably everyone in this room feels about you and your work and your team's work. Okay, with this intervention, con esta intervención, perdón, estaba diciendo simplemente, pues aquellos que no hablen inglés, que ha sido realmente impresionante el trabajo que nos ha enseñado, que probablemente algunos de los arquitectos en la sala quizá hayan sentido algo pues, celosos o incluso llenos de esperanza de algún día de poder formar parte de proyectos de esta envergadura y de esta belleza. Y que el aplauso que le han dado creo que refleja la admiración que probablemente todos sienten por el trabajo de este equipo. Con esta intervención hemos llegado al final del evento y a continuación se les va a servir un cóctel. Espero que lo disfruten. Thank you very much. Eskerrik asko denoi. Hasta pronto.